Invest 98L has formed on our doorstep with tropical impacts likely for the Caribbean through the week ahead. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi, my friends. Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather. Hey, it's great to see you on this Saturday. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a nice weekend. Obviously, I'm on because we've got to talk about Invest 98L. That's the tropical wave that is just east of the Lesser Antilles. It has developed today. We're going to talk about the evolution of this as it moves closer to the Eastern Caribbean and all the newest model information and what you need to know as that system is likely to impact the Caribbean through all of next week. As always, Meteo Mundo is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida, your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. Wind, hail, hurricane damage, they'll walk you through the insurance claim process. All you have to do is go to leanomnilaw.com for more information. Look, it's an important update. You have a question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. Of course, while you're down there, always love to hear from you guys. Let me know what's been happening in your area. So we're focusing on 98L. Now, again, this is our tropical wave that we've been monitoring all week. The Hurricane Center has now made this an invest. Again, that's just short for investigation. It is an area that they feel is likely to develop as it progresses. And it's still only a 30% chance right now from the Hurricane Center, but I gotta be honest, I think that's likely gonna go up in the short term. So let's talk about kind of in two parts. What is likely for this to do as it heads towards the Lesser Antilles, and then how it's going to evolve next week in the Caribbean itself. Now, when we look at it right now on the infrared satellite imagery, it's getting a little bit better organized with some deeper convection off to the south and to the east. There still is some drier air north and west. When you look at the VIS satellite imagery, if you notice that these clouds are kind of out by themselves, the outflow on the northwest side, it is fighting some drier air. All of the thickest moisture, deepest convection, east and south of the center, but there's also pretty good moisture plume out ahead of it as well. So even though the drier air is out here, it's not getting back ingested into the developing low-level center. So, all signs point for this, even though it might be slow development, to continue to develop. Now, here's the problem for the Lesser Antilles and the Windward Islands in general. This is an elongated area of moisture and several hundred miles out from the actual center of circulation from Invest 98L. We're already having some healthy tropical moisture coming back in. Of course, the yellow area is the chance for development, and the Hurricane Center does put it as far east as Barbados. So again, it's not likely to become a depression or a tropical storm. Melissa would be the next name before it moves to the Lesser Antilles, but the chance is not zero. Regardless, rain and wind impacts starting in the Lesser Antilles, especially in the Windward Islands, right now through Monday. And this could lead to some widespread flooding. We could have some wind issues, some power issues, and just localized problems associated with all of that. And of course, kicked up surf and sea conditions. So again, right now, if I just zoom out real quickly here and show you guys on my measuring tool that from Barbados at the hour, we're still about 25 miles away from the center of circulation moving in, and we're already getting some nasty thunderstorms. We're about 500 miles from Trinidad and Tobago. I want to show you guys the wind gusts as well. I'm going to put those on, but here's the problem. The rain is already moving in. We've still got maybe another 48 hours of this to pass through. So you want to talk about the opportunity, if you will, to see significant rain in the area. This is a setup that could certainly bring that to some areas, especially St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, Grenada, Trinidad, and Tobago. And again, we've already had some alerts go up. We have an adverse weather alert number 2 for Trinidad and Tobago as far as the rain and the opportunity for some flooding and some landslides and mudslides. We have hazardous seas adverse yellow alert number 1. We've got a marine warning up for Barbados, and you should expect in these areas there to be some flood advisories and some marine issues. Always check in with your local government and your local officials. But you friends, you can see at the hour, the thunderstorms are developing, rich, deep tropical moisture just east of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Bequia, Carriacou, down towards Grenada. We've had some passing showers already towards TNT, a few thunderstorms developing near Barbados at the hour. And again, there's a lot more to come before the actual Invest begins to work its way into the area. Now, at this point in time, there aren't significant wind gusts yet in this area, but as you guys know, I have access to buoy data as well. So I want to bring on some of the wind gusts here. You see these thunderstorms way out on the north side where the air is dry. This buoy in the Atlantic is actually showing some 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts. That is what I think is likely to move through the southern half of the Lesser Antilles, especially Sunday and Monday. And that wind could sneak a little bit farther to the north. The farther north you live in the Lesser Antilles, overall, you should expect less impacts. But especially from Guadeloupe south, to catch some 40-mile-an-hour winds as the system begins to move in, we'll see. And of course, as it tries to wrap up, there could be additional wind threats if we end up getting an actual low-level center. Now, of course, we have our live cameras here at Meteo Mundo to help tell the weather story. Live look to Corinth, St. Lucia. Again, we've had some thicker clouds. You know, this camera was pointed to the south just a second ago, and you can see some of the dark moisture-laden clouds just south of St. Lucia. The heaviest has yet to move in, but I promise you this camera is going to look a lot different as we go into Sunday and Monday. St. Lucia is an area I'm concerned about for the potential for some heavier rain. So for all of these islands, this is still what I'm expecting. Main impacts tomorrow and Monday. Yeah, we're getting some right now, but there's a lot more to come. 3 to 5 inches, that's 75 to 125 millimeters, but there can and more than likely will be some locally higher amounts. Obviously, it's localized dependent, depending on, do you live in a terrain area, some mountainous areas, what's the elevation change where you live, because a lot of that water can get to the low-lying areas quickly and produce additional flash flooding in those spots. Winds should likely be 20 to 30 miles an hour sustained as Invest 98L comes through, but we could even see some higher gusts as you've already seen, and we're going to get some massive swells coming in, about 8 to 10 foot swells, 2.5 to 3 meter swells. So there's going to be some issues maybe with some higher tides and obviously extremely high surf and sea conditions for you guys as well. So this is what I expect the first areas to be impacted by 98L starting now, but especially as we get into Sunday and Monday. The problem is that is likely to be the weakest that this system is going to be between now and about this time next week. So again, you can see that the development area, and the reason why the Hurricane Center has this development area so wide right now is that unfortunately there's still very little consensus in the models as to what's going to happen with the Invest, which again is likely to become a named storm, Melissa, as it gets into the Caribbean. And we're going to look at that in just a second, but there are some plausible scenarios where the storm slows down in the Eastern Caribbean, maybe sneaks into the Central Caribbean and moves north. There are other plausible scenarios that it continues to drive west towards Central America throughout next week. All of those possibilities are still on the table. As we know, now that we have an Invest, our spaghetti plots, our tropical models are beginning to run. So I want to show you that before we get into the individual models. First of all, again, I'm just going to take off this yellow area so it's easy to see. The models are in very good agreement that whatever center is going to be evolving with this system through Monday is going to go likely over Barbados and St. Vincent and St. Lucia, which is why, again, I said that camera is going to be changing very quickly. But obviously, with a kind of broader, sloppy system, the impact's going to be felt through a lot of other areas, at least the southern half of the Lesser Antilles. But deeper into time that we go, and especially with this system, so far, we have a lot of divergence in the models. Again, you're going to see some recurve it north towards Hispaniola and Puerto Rico. Others stall it out south of Haiti, southeast of Jamaica, and others drive it farther west. And all of those are still into play. I wish there was a better agreement at this point in time to talk about on this Saturday, but at this point in time, we don't have that. And this is how it goes sometimes with these storms. We know what we know and we don't know what we don't know, but I'm going to run over all the models for you guys right now. We're going to start off with the GFS deterministic. Again, this was a model and has been pretty good with this system overall. Now, again, we'll have to see how, this will play out over the next 2 to 3 days, especially into Monday and Tuesday. But for our friends in the Lesser Antilles, on the GFS model, we're likely to get a wet, sloppy, but disorganized system moving through. Again, it doesn't cause any harm moving through the islands, and this is still likely to evolve into a named storm on the GFS model, potentially as early as Wednesday. This is Thursday early, but if I go back out here to Wednesday the 22nd, you'll start to see it. Now, the GFS model for the last couple of model runs has been pretty model run to run consistent, right? That it slows it down south of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, and then picks it back to the north and to the east. And as it begins to move towards those islands, it becomes stronger. You can clearly see here as we get into, this is Friday morning of next week, you have a developing much stronger storm just south of the Dominican Republic that tries to go towards Hispaniola and Puerto Rico. And again, this is just one model. We're going to look at a lot of different possibilities, but step by step, this is what the GFS is showing us for today. Now, as far as intensity goes, when we look at the winds associated with the same model here, the GFS, take just a second to loop up. The interesting thing about this is, and I'll talk about this as it's looping up. Well, now it's looped up, so we'll get into it, but I want to discuss why it's trying to pull it back to the north and to the east in just a second. But again, as we get into next Friday, right, if we take a look at what the GFS model is showing as far as intensity, and again, if you live in Hispaniola, please don't be too anxious as of yet. This is just one solution that you're going to see. But when I show you this, this is likely to be a hurricane on the GFS model as we get towards next week. Now, again, it's pointed at this point in time near the Dominican Republic and Haiti and Puerto Rico, but that ultimately may be nowhere near where it goes. There is, again, no consensus in what is going to be happening with the storm once it gets into the Caribbean. The reason why the GFS is trying to pull it back north and to the east is that it's bringing in extremely strong westerly winds deep into the Gulf and even the Northwest Caribbean and the Western Atlantic Basin, a west to east wind, which is trying to drive the storm and stall it first and then pull it back north and east. It's kind of a block preventing it from getting any farther to the west. Now, at this point in time, there's no reason to get any more deep dive into that. We'll see how, as we get into early next week, things want to evolve in the atmosphere north and west of the storm, because that's a lot of shear up there if that ends up being the case. But there's two things. First of all, not all the models have that strong of storm winds as the GFS does. And secondly, if it stalls out long enough, all of that shear and that wind begins to relax, and there could be an open corridor that could still allow it to pull off towards the west. But the one thing I'll note about the GFS is, if you guys have been watching the videos the last couple of days, it has been pretty consistent with a stall out in the central Caribbean and then a push back north into the east. These are the Ensemble members of the same model. You just saw the deterministic or the main model run. So this is the Ensemble members. And again, not developing over the Lesser Antilles. Here's your time frame right here. Tuesday and Wednesday, we start to see a very sluggish storm as far as speed goes, developing, again, just south of Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, and mainly moving to the north. You have some that are way out in the Western Atlantic Basin. You have a couple closer to Jamaica. And I do want to point out, this is a completely different storm, if you will, on the Southwest Caribbean. Now, there's been a couple little model hints that near this monsoon trough, near Panama and Costa Rica, there could be a secondary center trying to develop. I'm discounting it at this point in time, but I'll obviously monitor the situation. I think regardless, it could bring a lot of wet weather to the western side of our area, Central America and Quintana Roo, outside of what is likely to become Melissa is going to develop. You get the idea. Extremely active weather for the Caribbean for the weekend. Probably the most active weather of the hurricane season, regardless of development, with just a lot of tropical moisture in a storm that is likely to be stalling out in the Caribbean. European Ensemble members, this time yesterday, they were tracking to the west. What are they doing today? Again, a very slow moving storm, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, development Thursday, Friday. I'm still very concerned about how strong some of the Ensemble members make this. Just like the GFS, it would be a hurricane, but they are farther east and north compared to 24 hours ago. We'll see if that's the windshield wiper effect or whether the European model is picking up on the same strong west winds, kind of creating a block and not allowing it to go farther west in the Caribbean. Again, there's that one little area that is not associated with our storm that could be trying to develop on the southwest side of the Caribbean, but all of the other ones are. And again, from here, maybe a farther push to the north, maybe a slight jog off towards the west. Some of these are a little bit closer to Jamaica on the European model. This is the AI version of the European Ensemble. To point out again, neither of the European or the European AI have development near the Lesser Antilles. This is all happening in the Eastern and Central Caribbean. And again, it's a little bit quicker to develop on the European AI model, but not by much. There's a bigger spread, though, into the end of next week. So by Friday afternoon, just like the GFS, you have a couple out here east of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos, but the majority still south or near the island of Hispaniola. When we look at the Google DeepMind, I want to point out a couple of things. First of all, you're going to see, obviously, this bolded dashed line here that goes over Jamaica. Let me be very clear. That is the Ensemble mean, or the average of all of the lighter dotted lines that you see. So just because it's pointed over here doesn't mean that that's the direction it's going to go. It's the average of a huge spread, right? You've got some members all the way over here, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola. You've got others that are driving it towards Nicaragua and Honduras and Belize. And so when you average out those tracks, it just happens to be over Jamaica. But if you look at how many members are actually over that area, it's actually very little compared to west and east of you. But the biggest thing is that this DeepMind model from Google, which has done very well this hurricane season, it doesn't have a big consensus or an idea of what's going to happen. But you do see the stall out. You notice that all these squiggly lines are near each other here. Tuesday, Wednesday, a big stall out southeast of Jamaica, north of the ABC Islands, south of Haiti and the Dominican Republic as well. But, you know, sometimes this happens, my friends. Sometimes you get these scenarios where even 3 and 4 days out, you just really have to watch and see how these systems evolve. Unfortunately, this is one that's very close to home. So the GFS tracks, if we look at this kind of on a spaghetti plot, again, you have a few going west, you have some going north, but very weak through the Lesser Antilles overall. When we look at the European model, Ensemble tracks, again, as spaghetti plots, right? So your average gets you south and east of Jamaica. Some of them, again, going north, more going off towards the west, but a lot of them just very slow in this area, right? So we'll see how that plays out as well. So here's what you need to know overall at this point in time. Here's kind of what we know, and again, the things that we're still keeping an eye out to get better determination on. Rain and wind impacts for the Lesser Antilles starting right now, but certainly even more aggressive Sunday and Monday. Slow development is likely in the Caribbean through the middle of next week. Now, there's still very little model consensus on where and how strong this is going to be. So interests in all of the Central and the Eastern Caribbean need to closely monitor. Again, it's still watch and wait mode. You always check in with your local government and your local officials. It's never a problem to be overly prepared. If you have an opportunity, I know everyone's situation is different, but get a little bit extra water, get a little bit extra non-perishable foods, just so you're prepared in case this does develop and head your way, because once it does evolve, we may not have the most amount of lead time that we'd like as far as this is developing and where it might be going to. But again, please make sure that if you do live in the Caribbean and even out west, even in Central America, just make sure you're paying attention here. I'll provide you updates throughout the week, but the farther west that you live, if nothing else, you're going to have more time with this developing system. So I appreciate you guys taking a quick second, hitting the like button for me. If you haven't subscribed and you want these tropical updates and your daily forecasts across the Caribbean and the Bahamas, you of course have found your home. Thanks for hitting that subscribe button for me. Appreciate all those who share this channel with your family and friends. If you've gotten anything out of this video, maybe someone you know and love might get something out of it as well. Appreciate all of the members of the channel. You can find that via the join button. For as little as 99 cents a month, you can help support the channel in that regard as well. Okay, I want to get into what's been happening in the area today, right? So obviously we have some impacts already from 98L in the Windward Islands. We looked at the St. Lucia camera. We're starting to dry out a bit for the rest of the Lesser Antilles, which is good news from what that trough brought us through the end of the week. Scattered showers are developing over portions of Puerto Rico, especially towards San Juan to the Arecibo areas on the northern sides. So far, we've been quieter today in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, but thunderstorms are beginning to develop there. And this is an area where we have had some significant rain the last few days, and there are some flood advisories currently in effect. Thunderstorms, again, what did I tell you guys in Jamaica? It's just another active afternoon. They've been very aggressive. They've been very widespread. There's been a ton of lightning, mainly favoring northern coastal areas. So from Hanover all the way over towards Portland parishes, but especially St. Mary, St. Anne parishes, Trelawney, St. James, places like that. That's where we've had the most aggressive thunderstorms, but even a couple have developed near and around the Kingston area, just north. Hayes and Maypen have had a few storms as well. And again, for our western parishes, that's a lot of lightning out there. Some of that slipping towards Savlamar, Lucy, and Negril at the hour. Few thunderstorms developing over Little Cayman and Cayman Brac. And again, this trough line is still somewhat active. It's elongated east to west, so thunderstorms have been able to push into portions of the Yucatan today, just south of Cancun, especially towards Cozumel and Tulum, portions of Belize and Guatemala. We've had some isolated to scattered rain for today as well, but still many dry hours in locations. And again, we'll have to watch out for anything developing here next week as well. I'm not as keen on the idea at this point because, again, the models have a bias with the persistent monsoon trough, but there's a little bit more signal there on the global models for something to try and wrap up at this point in time. It's been a beautiful day in the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. We've had a few showers and thunderstorms trying to ramp up over the ABC Islands. These are areas that could really use some of this rain that has been developing in a localized fashion over the last couple of afternoons. Appreciate you guys. You guys have sent in some wonderful pictures and videos lately. Want to show you some of those. This is going to be from St. Vincent, from Mary Bernard, now looking east towards Barbados. So we're looking towards the approaching Invest 98L. Appreciate Mary sending in that photo from St. Vincent. And what a great shot from Captain Pauly here. A sunset in Aruba yesterday. I don't think you can paint a better picture than that. Those purples in the sky are absolutely amazing, and appreciate my friends in the channel sending in those photos. So let's get into what's going to be happening here in the short term. Again, I know not all of you are going to be impacted by 98L as of right now, but obviously I'm concerned, as you guys can probably hear from my voice, about how this could ultimately play out. Now, we're going to have some time to watch what happens over the next few days, probably at least through Tuesday, with a slow developing system. But after that, right, the problem is that we're very close to many islands if this thing wants to wrap up in a hurry kind of Wednesday, Thursday. So, we are kind of watching and waiting right now, but we might be getting into action mode in a couple of spots here, Wednesday and Thursday of next week, depending on how this ends up evolving. But as I have mentioned, regardless, I think this is the most active week we've seen so far this hurricane season throughout the entire Caribbean. I don't care if you live in Cancun or Belize City or Tegucigalpa or Panama City or Aruba or Trinidad up towards Barbuda and Antigua or Puerto Rico or the Turks and Caicos, you're likely to get some pretty active showers and storms. Now, the Bahamas is an area that's going to be a little bit drier. I'll give you that, but Kingston and Jamaica should be fairly wet. And obviously central and the eastern sides of our area will continue to watch the situation. Regardless, again, heavy rain and some localized flooding. The other big issue is going to be the marine problems, right? So wherever this goes, however this wants to develop, it's going to be pushing in at least 10-foot swells, but likely even higher. The western Atlantic basin is still churned up, you see that, but as that relaxes through midweek, we start to get the evolution of this system. Again, this model I'm showing you is based off of the GFS, so I do want you to note that if this ends up playing out, right, and this storm does go near Hispaniola, obviously it's a very mountainous island, it's kind of known as a storm ripper-upper, but anything that survives getting into the western Atlantic basin could, even as a broader system, bring some extremely rough wind and wave conditions to portions of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos down the road. If it goes that way, obviously if it drives farther west, we'll be talking about more impacts for places like Jamaica and Cuba and the Yucatan and Central America. Those details are still yet to be borne out. Rainfall totals, again, are likely to be significant. Now, the European model has shifted closer to the GFS right now. So if you look at the south side of Hispaniola, you have up to 20 inches of rain in a couple of spots there on that. Hopefully we don't get that kind of rain in that kind of an area, but you see the moisture laden air that is likely to come through. And if you're in the path of this storm, like the Lesser Antilles and down the road, other portions of the Caribbean, I think, 4, 5, 6+ inches of rain should be a very widespread number, well over 100 millimeters, could be double or even triple that in a couple of locations. Friends, I'm going to keep you updated. You can also follow us across all of our social media platforms. We're on Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. You want to send me a picture and video like Mary and Captain Pauly did for today to help tell the weather story in your area. The easiest way to do that is mymediamundo@gmail.com. I'm here for you guys. If you guys have a question about the forecast, please let me know in the comments section below. And please remember that Media Mundo is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida, your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys, offering free consultation and policy reviews. They'll walk you through every step of the insurance claim process. You got nothing to lose. It's leanonmelaw.com for more information. All right, my friends, you have a great rest of your day. I'm closely monitoring the situation. I'm back tomorrow with all the details that you need to know. Until then, you take care, and I'll see you soon right here at Media Mundo.